Ladies and gentlemen, imagine feeling invisible while still breathing, like your voice, your dreams, and even your happiness are under attack, not by strangers, but by someone who pretends to care. Picture a presence that smiles at the world but slowly, quietly chips away at your spirit, your confidence, your very sense of self. Today, we're uncovering 6 secret signs that someone in your life might want to dim your light, to control you, to isolate you from who you are meant to be. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see how to reclaim your power and rise fully, unapologetically, and free. Your life has value, not because of what you achieve, how popular you are, how useful you are to others, but simply because you exist. That truth sounds simple, yet it is the first thing a narcissistic person tries to erase. They slowly teach you to believe your worth depends on how well you please them, how quiet you stay, or how much of yourself you sacrifice. Over time, you may start thinking that your feelings don't matter, that your needs are selfish, or that you are only valuable when you are useful. That is not truth. That is conditioning. For a young person, especially, this can be confusing. You are still discovering who you are, and when someone constantly criticizes, ignores, or manipulates you, it can feel like maybe they are right. But value is not something another human being gets to assign or remove. You were valuable the moment you were born. Before grades, before mistakes, before opinions. Your thoughts matter. Your emotions matter. Your boundaries matter. When someone tries to shrink you, silence you, or make you feel like you should disappear to keep peace, they are crossing a line. No one has the right to take up space by pushing you out of your own life. Healthy relationships make you feel seen, safe, and encouraged to grow. Unhealthy ones make you feel small, afraid to speak, and unsure of yourself. Understanding your value is not about arrogance or ego. It is about self-respect. It is about knowing that love should never cost you your identity. The moment you accept that your life has value, you begin to notice when something feels wrong. You start listening to your inner voice instead of dismissing it. That awareness becomes protection. When you know you matter, it becomes much harder for anyone to convince you that you don't. And once you understand that your life has value, something else becomes painfully clear. Not everyone who hurts you is trying to hurt your body. Some people are aiming for something much deeper. Narcissists don't destroy bodies, they destroy spirits. They don't come with knives or threats. They come with words, looks, silence, and doubt. They don't push you to the ground. They push you into yourself until you're trapped inside your own head. Starts quietly. A joke that stings a little too much. A comment that makes you feel embarrassed for caring. A sigh when you speak about something you love. These moments seem small, but they stack up like heavy stones on your chest. Over time, you stop raising your hand. You stop sharing your thoughts. You stop trusting your feelings. That's how spirit destruction works, not in one blow, but in 1,000 tiny cuts. When someone attacks your spirit, they make you feel like being yourself is the problem. Your kindness becomes weakness. Your emotions become drama. Your boundaries become attitude. And slowly, you begin editing yourself just to survive the relationship. You laugh less, you dream smaller, you apologize more, not because you're wrong, but because you're tired. This is why understanding your value matters so much. Because once your spirit is broken, it becomes easier for someone to control you. A person with a strong sense of self is hard to manipulate, but someone who doubts their worth can be guided, pressured, and shaped into whatever keeps the narcissist comfortable. Here's the truth that brings the power back to you. Your spirit is not weak just because it was wounded. A flame that flickers is not dead, it's fighting. The moment you recognize that emotional harm is real harm, you take the first step toward protecting yourself. And protection begins when you stop normalizing pain and start choosing yourself. And when a person has already chipped away at your spirit, the next move becomes almost invisible. Control rarely shows up wearing cruelty. It shows up wearing concern. It sounds like, I'm only saying this because I care about you, or I know what's best for you. That's how control hides behind the mask of love. And when you've already been made to doubt your worth and your inner strength, that mask is easy to believe. At first, it feels comforting. Someone paying close attention, someone guiding your choices, someone correcting you before you mess up. But slowly, their guidance turns into rules. Their advice turns into pressure. Their care turns into supervision. You begin to feel like you need permission to be yourself. What you wear, who you talk to, what you post, what you dream about, it all becomes something they feel entitled to comment on or control. The most confusing part is that they don't always sound angry. Sometimes they sound loving, sometimes they sound protective. And that's why so many people stay. Because it doesn't feel like abuse, it feels like responsibility. You start believing that if you just listen more, obey more, change more, everything will be okay. But love doesn't require you to shrink to be safe. Love doesn't punish you for independence. Love doesn't demand silence in exchange for approval. When control pretends to be love, it teaches you to ignore discomfort. That uneasy feeling in your chest, you push it down, that quiet voice saying something isn't right. You silence it, and over time, you forget that love is supposed to feel freeing, not suffocating. Especially for someone young, this can shape how you see relationships forever. Here's the grounding truth: real love respects choice. It invites growth, not obedience. The moment you realize that control is not care, you begin to loosen the grip it has on you. And in that realization, your spirit starts breathing again. And when control has settled in, it doesn't stop at your choices. It moves into your silence. Because one of the most dangerous tricks is convincing you that quiet means peace, that if things are calm, if there's no arguing, if no one is yelling, then everything must be fine. But silence is not always safety. Sometimes silence is a warning sign that something inside you has learned it's safer not to speak. You stop bringing things up because every time you do, it turns into blame. You stop asking questions because you're tired of being misunderstood. You stop expressing hurt because it gets dismissed or twisted back onto you. So you choose quiet, not because you agree, but because you're exhausted. That's how a narcissist uses silence as a weapon. They don't need to argue if they've already trained you not to talk. And from the outside, it can look like things are better, less conflict, fewer emotions, less drama. But inside, something is breaking. Your thoughts pile up with nowhere to go. Your feelings stay trapped in your chest. Your voice starts to feel unfamiliar, like a language you forgot how to speak. This kind of silence doesn't bring peace. It brings disconnection from yourself. Especially for someone young, learning to stay quiet can feel like maturity. You may tell yourself you're being strong, understanding, or patient, but strength is not swallowing pain until it disappears. Pain doesn't disappear that way, it just moves deeper. Real peace allows honesty, real safety allows questions, real connection makes room for your voice, even when it shakes. Here's what matters: your silence is trying to tell you something. If being quiet is the only way to avoid being hurt, that's not harmony. That's survival mode. And you were not meant to survive relationships. You were meant to live in them. The moment you recognize that silence can be a signal, you begin listening to yourself again. And that listening is the beginning of your freedom. And once you've learned to stay silent, something else quietly takes its place: fear. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers. The kind that tells you to be careful, to think twice, to not upset anyone. This is where fear becomes fuel. Because when someone realizes that your fear can control you, they begin to rely on it more than words. You start noticing how your body reacts before your mind does. Your stomach tightens when they walk into the room. Your heart speeds up when your phone lights up with their name. You rehearse conversations in your head, trying to predict the safest version of yourself to present. That fear didn't come from nowhere. It was taught, slowly, repeatedly, through punishment, withdrawal, sarcasm, or disappointment. And the more afraid you become of their reactions, the more powerful they feel. Your fear reassures them that they matter, that they are in control, that they can shape your behavior without even trying. They don't have to threaten you. Your fear does the work for them. That's how fear becomes their energy source. What's dangerous is how normal it starts to feel. You may believe this is just how relationships are, that caring means worrying, that love means being scared to mess up. Especially at a young age, fear can get confused with respect. But respect does not make you shrink. Respect does not live in your chest as tension. Respect does not silence your joy. Here is the turning point: fear is information, not a life sentence. If someone benefits from you being afraid, they are not protecting you. They are feeding off you. The moment you recognize that fear is being used against you, it begins to lose its grip. Your body is not betraying you, it's warning you. And when you learn to listen to that warning instead of ignoring it, you start taking your power back. Courage doesn't mean the fear vanishes. It means you stop letting fear decide who you are. And when fear no longer works the way it used to, when you start noticing it instead of obeying it, something else becomes clear. They were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of who you could become, because nothing threatens a narcissist more than a person who is growing, dreaming, and discovering their own strength. This is where they begin pushing against your future. Your goals start sounding unrealistic to them. Your passions become distractions. Your confidence gets labeled as attitude. They don't always say don't succeed, but they make success feel heavy, lonely, and unsupported. They remind you of your past mistakes right when you try something new. They plant doubt right where hope is trying to grow. You might notice that whenever you talk about who you want to be, the energy in the room shifts, the encouragement disappears, the warmth fades. That's not because your dreams are wrong, it's because your independence scares them. A person who believes in themselves becomes harder to control. A person with a future doesn't need permission to exist. For someone young, this can be especially painful. You are still building your identity, still figuring out your place in the world. When someone you trust discourages your growth, it can feel like maybe you're asking for too much. But wanting more is not betrayal. Becoming yourself is not abandonment. You are not disloyal for outgrowing a space that is too small for you. Here is the truth that breaks the spell. Anyone who truly cares about you wants you to become more, not less. They want your light brighter, your voice stronger, your world bigger. If someone needs you to stay unsure, dependent, or small so they can feel powerful, they were never rooting for you. They were using you. And the moment you choose your growth anyway, something incredible happens. You don't just move forward, you rise. And in that rise, their control finally begins to fade. And as you begin to rise, as you start choosing growth even when it scares you, this is often where their grip tightens in a different way. Because if they can't control who you are becoming, they try to control who you have around you. Isolation becomes their strongest weapon, not by locking doors, but by closing circles. They don't say, you can't see them. They say, they don't really understand you. They plant doubts about your friends, your family, the people who once made you feel safe. Slowly, conversations feel tense. Hangouts feel complicated. You start pulling away not because you want to, but because it feels easier than dealing with the drama that follows. And before you realize it, your world gets quieter, smaller. Isolation is powerful because it makes their voice the loudest one in your head. When there's no one else to reflect your truth back to you, their version of reality starts to feel like the only one. You stop checking your feelings against others. You stop asking, is this okay? You just assume this is how life is supposed to feel. Lonely, confusing, heavy. For someone young, this can be devastating. We are not meant to grow alone. We discover who we are through connection, through shared laughter, through different perspectives. When those connections are cut off, even strong people begin to doubt themselves. And that's exactly the point. Isolation doesn't just remove support, it removes clarity. But here's what matters. The urge to pull away didn't come from strength, it came from pressure. And the longing you feel for connection is not weakness, it's wisdom. Your heart knows it was never meant to survive alone. The moment you reach back out, even quietly, even carefully, something shifts. A text, a conversation, a trusted adult, a safe friend. Light starts coming back in, and with it, perspective. Because isolation only works when you believe you're better off alone. You're not. You never were. And the more you reconnect, the less power they have over who you are becoming. And when isolation has done its work, when there are fewer voices around you to reflect the truth back, the final confusion settles in. You begin doubting your own reality. This is where gaslighting takes root. Not as a single lie, but as a steady drip of denial that makes you question what you saw, what you felt, what you remember. And without others nearby to ground you, that doubt can feel overwhelming. You think back to a moment that hurt you, and suddenly you're not sure if it really happened the way you remember. You recall a tone, a look, a promise broken, but their voice echoes louder in your head saying, "You're exaggerating, you misunderstood, that's not what I meant." And slowly, your confidence in your own mind begins to crack. You start asking them what's real instead of asking yourself. This is one of the most painful places to be because you stop trusting the one person who has been with you through every single moment of your life, you, especially at a young age. When you're still learning how to trust your instincts, this can feel terrifying. If you can't trust your own thoughts, who can you trust? But here is the grounding truth: confusion is not your natural state, it was created. Healthy relationships may include disagreements, but they don't erase your reality. They don't make you feel like you're losing your grip on what's true. When you constantly feel foggy, unsure, or guilty for bringing things up that it's not growth, that's manipulation. Your feelings are not random. Your memories are not meaningless. That uncomfortable sense that something is off, that's your inner compass trying to recalibrate. Trusting yourself again doesn't happen all at once. It starts with small moments, writing things down, checking in with safe people, listening to your body. Every time you honor your own experience, the fog thins. And the more you trust yourself, the less power gaslighting has. Because clarity is dangerous to those who depend on your confusion. And as the fog begins to lift, something powerful happens. Awareness wakes up, not loudly, not all at once, but like the first light of morning after a long night. You start noticing patterns instead of isolated moments. You see that it wasn't just one comment, one argument, or one misunderstanding. It was a system. And that realization, as painful as it is, becomes your turning point. Awareness is uncomfortable because it forces you to stop making excuses for what hurt you. It asks you to name things honestly, to admit that what you experienced wasn't normal or fair or loving. And that can feel scary, especially if you've spent a long time blaming yourself. But awareness isn't about judging the past, it's about protecting the future. Once you see clearly, you can't unsee. You begin to notice how your body reacts before your mind catches up. You recognize the patterns of silence, fear, control, and doubt. And instead of automatically shrinking, you pause. That pause is powerful. It creates space between what someone does and how you respond. That space is where freedom starts to grow. For someone young, awareness is especially important because it gives you language for what you're feeling. Instead of thinking something is wrong with me, you begin thinking something is wrong with this dynamic. That shift alone can change everything. It reminds you that pain is not proof of failure, it's information. Awareness doesn't mean you suddenly have all the answers. It doesn't mean the situation magically ends. What it means is that you are no longer asleep inside it. You are watching, you are learning, you are choosing more carefully. And that makes you stronger than you realize. People who rely on control fear awareness more than confrontation. Because once you see the truth, their power starts slipping away. You may not be ready to act yet, and that's okay. Awareness is the first step, not the last, but it is the moment you stop being lost. And once you are no longer lost, the path forward slowly but surely begins to appear. And once awareness takes root, it naturally leads to the most important choice you can ever make: choosing yourself. Because seeing the patterns, recognizing the manipulation, and trusting your own reality are all steps that lead to one undeniable truth: you matter. Not as a reward for obedience, not as a consolation for surviving someone else's control, but simply because you are alive, thinking, feeling, and breathing in this world. Choosing yourself means claiming that truth, loud and clear. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you lash out or abandon others in anger. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people or stop loving those who are kind to you. It means you stop letting anyone convince you that your needs, your voice, or your dreams are less important than maintaining someone else's comfort. It means you stop shrinking to fit into someone else's world and start expanding into your own. This step is especially powerful for someone young because it sets the foundation for everything that comes after. When you choose yourself, you learn that boundaries are not punishments, they are acts of courage. You learn that saying no is not betrayal, it is survival. You learn that your happiness, safety, and growth are not optional, they are essential. And every time you make a choice in your own favor, even a small one, you remind yourself that your life is yours to live. The beauty of choosing yourself is that it creates momentum. Awareness gives you vision, and self choice gives you action. You may stumble, you may feel guilty, But each time you prioritize your well being, each time you refuse to let manipulation define your life, your spirit grows stronger. And here is the truth that carries every lesson we've discussed. When you finally choose yourself, you take back your power. No one can erase it, no one can control it. And no matter how dark or manipulative someone else's actions have been, your life begins to glow again, fully, unapologetically, and free. And now, as we come to the end of this journey together, I want you to take a moment and let every word sink in. All those signs we talked about, the silences, the fear, the control, the isolation, the doubt, the attempts to stop you from growing, they were never about you being weak. They were about someone else's fear of your strength, your light, your potential. And the most important thing I want you to remember is this: none of it defines you. None of it diminishes your worth, your dreams, or your future. You have been listening carefully, following each step of this story, and that is not accidental. Awareness has already started working inside you. You have started noticing the patterns, naming the manipulation, feeling the power of your own emotions and experiences. That spark inside you, that quiet voice that says, I am more than this, it is real, it is alive, and it is yours. The truth is, freedom is not given, it is chosen. Every time you refuse to shrink, every time you speak your truth, every time you protect your spirit, you reclaim your life. And here is the part that most people forget. When you choose yourself, you don't just survive, you thrive. You light up your own world. You inspire others to recognize their own value. You become the proof that no one, no matter how manipulative, can take away your essence unless you let them. So I leave you with this vision. Imagine walking into every room, every conversation, every relationship, knowing that your light cannot be dimmed, your voice cannot be silenced, and your worth cannot be questioned. That is the power of understanding, awareness, and self-choice. That is the life waiting for you when you refuse to settle for anything less than the freedom, respect, and love you deserve. And that, my friends, is where true victory begins.